Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I always thought that in a relationship, compromise was the quiet glue that held things together. You bend a little, she bends a little, and somehow you make it work. My name is Theo, and I've been with Lila for 5 years. She's spirited, funny, the kind of person who lights up a room without even trying. I'm quieter, more grounded, careful with my words, preferring calm nights over loud parties. Somehow we balanced each other out until last Friday. It started innocently enough. I was sitting in the living room, nursing a cup of tea, trying to get my weekend started quietly. Lila burst through the door like a hurricane, keys jingling, hair messy, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Theo, I'm going to Zoe's party tonight," she announced, tossing her jacket over the chair. I looked up, trying to keep my voice even. "Wait, tonight? I thought we had plans to just relax." She laughed, a sound so bright it almost made me smile. "Almost. Relax? Boring. Everyone's going to be there. It's going to be amazing. And honestly, you could use a little excitement." I leaned back in my chair, trying to mask the small pinch of frustration building in my chest. I don't know, Lila, parties aren't really my thing. I was hoping for a quiet evening, just us. Her smile faltered for a second, and I could see it, like a storm cloud passing over sunlight. She crossed the room, hands on her hips, and said firmly, "Theo, I'm going whether you like it or not. I don't care if you want to stay in. It's my night, my choice." I felt my stomach tighten, a mix of irritation and something heavier I couldn't quite name. My first instinct was to argue, to plead, to make her see why it mattered to me. But as I looked at her, bright eyes, a spark that could ignite anyone around her, I realized how stubborn she could be. And honestly, I didn't want to fight. I took a slow breath, letting the tension in my shoulders soften. "Even better," I said with a small, almost mischievous smile. "We'll have the house to ourselves." Her eyebrows shot up, a mix of confusion and curiosity. "What do you mean?" she asked, tilting her head like she always did when she was trying to decode me. "I mean," I said, standing up and pacing just a little, "you go out and enjoy your party. I'll stay home. We can have the whole place, just the two of us, later. No distractions, no loud music, no one else." Lila's lips pressed together, and for a second, she looked genuinely surprised. I could see her mind working through it, trying to process that I wasn't fighting her, wasn't angry, wasn't even sulking. I was calm, strategic even. "So, you're not going?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Not tonight," I said simply. "Tonight is your night. Enjoy it. But don't expect me to entertain anyone when I just want to be here, in our little world." Her smile softened, and she shook her head, letting out a breathy laugh. "You always know how to twist things around, don't you?" I shrugged, feeling a subtle satisfaction wash over me. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about drawing a boundary, about creating space where we could breathe again. I knew she'd be gone for hours, and that was fine. I'd have the living room to myself, maybe play that old jazz record she teases me about. The thought of quiet, unbroken hours for once felt luxurious. She grabbed her purse, tossed me a playful wink, and said, "Well, if the house is ours, I expect it to be spotless when I get back." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Don't worry, I've got it under control." As she left, I closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling a mix of relief and amusement. Relationships weren't always about compromise. Sometimes, they were about knowing when to step back, letting her shine, and carving out your own little slice of peace. The night stretched ahead, empty yet full of potential. I could hear the faint buzz of distant music from the street, the hum of cars passing by, but inside, everything was quiet. The world felt slowed down, like it had been pressed into pause just for me. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that maybe these little moments, these spaces carved out intentionally, were what truly kept us sane, kept us grounded, kept the laughter alive for the mornings when we returned to each other. Hours passed, and I found myself smiling at the small things. The hum of the refrigerator, the flicker of the lamp in the corner, the gentle creak of the floor under my feet. I wasn't lonely. Not really. I was alive, aware, existing in a way that was all my own, even if just for a few fleeting hours. And then it hit me. Sometimes the best nights weren't the ones crowded with people and noise. Sometimes the best nights were the quiet ones, where contrast made the moments with her later feel even richer, more meaningful. By the time Lila's laughter and the muffled sound of her car faded into the distance, the apartment felt like a sanctuary. I wandered into the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of water, savoring the silence that had settled over every corner. It wasn't emptiness. It was clarity. And in that clarity, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't realized I was craving. I settled onto the sofa, letting my legs stretch out as I picked up the old hardcover book I'd been meaning to read for months. The one she always teased me about. Dusty, boring classics, she'd said, rolling her eyes. Tonight it felt perfect. I could immerse myself without interruptions, without explanations, without judgment. Time passed differently in a quiet house. Each tick of the clock, each distant sound outside, became amplified, almost intimate. I could hear my own breathing, my own thoughts. I realized how often I had let her energy, her needs, and her plans fill every corner of my life. Not in resentment, but simply because I loved her, because I cared. And yet, these moments alone reminded me that I still existed outside her orbit, still had a life of my own, independent and valid. Around 9, I moved to the kitchen to make something simple just for myself. The rhythmic chopping of vegetables, the hiss of oil in the pan, the smell of something warm and comforting. These small actions grounded me. I realized I hadn't done this for myself in a long time. Not really. Not without compromise or distraction. Tonight, the house was ours, as I had promised myself. Somewhere between cooking and pouring a second glass of wine, I found myself smiling at the thought of Lila at the party. Knowing her, she was probably surrounded by friends, music blaring, stories being told. And yet, she wasn't here, and I was here, savoring each quiet, deliberate choice I had made. The contrast was almost poetic. Her chaos outside mirrored my calm inside. I didn't feel jealous or bitter. I felt balanced. A little later, my phone buzzed. A message from Lila. I glanced at it, expecting a selfie, a short quip, maybe even a playful tease. Instead, it was a single line. "Wish you were here." I smiled, a quiet warmth spreading across my chest. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I set the phone down, savoring the moment. The house was ours, not in a possessive sense, but in a restorative one. We were individuals who chose to share life, and sometimes, space and contrast were the glue that kept that choice meaningful. Hours passed. I moved between the sofa and the balcony, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Each glow reflected a tiny story, lives moving, moments unfolding. Yet here I was, present, aware, anchored in my own narrative. I thought about how easy it would have been to argue with Lila, to insist she stay home, to make her plans revolve around me. But instead, I had chosen something subtler, something stronger. Patience, respect, and trust in the bond we shared. When Lila finally returned, the house felt different. Not empty, not tense, but alive in a quiet, familiar way. She stepped in, hair slightly messy, cheeks flushed from the night, eyes lighting up as she saw me curled up on the sofa with my book. "Hey!" she said softly, voice tinged with exhaustion but happiness. I set the book down, smiling warmly. "Hey!" I replied. "Did you have fun?" She nodded, flopping onto the sofa beside me. "Yeah, it was loud, but fun." And quiet moments like this, I forgot how much I like them. I reached over, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sometimes, a little contrast makes everything sweeter," I said gently. She leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. "You were right," she murmured. "I needed this. You knew it without even saying it." We sat there for a while, silent but together. No phones, No music, no outside noise, just us. In that space, I realized that relationships weren't about winning arguments or forcing compromise. They were about understanding, patience, and sometimes stepping back so the other person could feel the life they needed. And in that understanding, we had rediscovered a quiet intimacy, deeper than any party, stronger than any argument. Later, as the night wore on, we moved into the kitchen to clean up together, laughing quietly at the tiny things. The way a glass wobbled, the misstep of a towel, the shared rhythm of two people moving in sync. The house was alive again, not because of noise or chaos, but because we had both returned to it with open hearts and a renewed sense of presence. By the time we finally climbed into bed, the contrast of the day, her night out, my quiet solitude, felt like a bridge connecting us in a way we hadn't realized we needed. It wasn't about control or winning or compromise for the sake of peace. It was about choosing each other every day in the small, quiet, deliberate ways that truly mattered. And as we drifted off, I realized something simple but profound. Sometimes, letting go just a little, stepping aside without resentment, was the strongest way to hold on.